To have passion in life is everything.
What's your Everest?
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
that 200-inch buck?
They just look so impressive when they're wide.
Especially running away.
Welcome to this week's episode of Eastmans Elevated.
It's like a think tank for outdoor activity.
Sounds exactly like my hunting. Just always thinking about it, always trying to evolve it and make it better.
Here's your host, Brian Barney.
Hey, what's going on, guys? New episode of Eastmans Elevated. So let's see if I remember how to still do this. It's been a couple weeks. It's just been so busy going on these hunts. I did my Montana rut hunt and did that with family, and then got back and just had a couple days in between, and then went on this Ohio whitetail. So I may have forgot how to podcast. We'll see. I'm going to try to do the intro and ending all in one. I'm going to try to do a solo episode today. So I just want to talk about this hunt I had with my family and talk about mule deer hunting and whitetail hunting. And I've just had so much go on here in the last couple weeks that I just want to kind of break it down and see what we can all learn from it, and let you know the mistakes I made and also the successes we had, and just been an awesome couple weeks. So anyways, we'll do it live today. So our sponsor for today's show is onX Maps. onX is just a game changer for me. I use it on my phone now exclusively. I didn't even use my GPS this year. You know, I catch all the maps in there, so you can pre-save all the maps for where you're headed, and then you can do like this big overall save that makes sure that you get all the units. And when you're doing it, just make sure that you have the map layers on that you want to be saved, so that your private public, or your public landowners is on that map when you save it. And then you save it, and then you don't even have to have cell phone coverage, and you can go into it and you can just actually see on that screen and navigate, zoom in, and see topography. It's just an absolutely awesome app. And I'll also save in detail some of my favorite hunting spots, or the spots I want to go, because therefore you can zoom in further and see even more detail. And then you can switch over. Anytime you save a map, you can do topography, you can do aerial photography, which is like Google Maps and that, and then also Google Maps with topography in it, this hybrid system. But they are just putting out an awesome product. And just recently I started using it on my computer as well. And so I've been using it on my computer for all my scouting, and just what an awesome tool it is to have all your units on there, unit breakdown, and now they have a new overlay that's the Eastmans MRS overlay. And so this is brand new. I just heard about it today. I think it goes out to the public today. What a well-designed overlay for their mapping system. And so it just overlays our grading system for units, and then you click on it, it'll give you information on how many points it is to draw, the percentage of people that were satisfied with their hunt. Anyways, it's a really cool overlay, so make sure to check that out. I'm super impressed. Can't wait to dive into it deeper tonight and see what I can find out. And we're getting out of this 2017 hunting season and starting to get into tag season. I know I have one more hunt left for Coues deer that'll come up in January, which will actually be a 2018 hunt. But what an unbelievably awesome season. I've talked about it. I swear I say it every podcast, but it's just been a great year. I'm just starting to. I've always been able to hunt a lot, but this year I was even able to take more time and really enjoy my time afield and help family and help friends and help them be successful and get into critters and then just have a bunch of my own adventures that I went on and was successful on a bunch of them. So just absolutely awesome hunting season. So I just can't wait for next year and start doing the research and figuring out where I'm going to put in and which hunts I'm gonna go for, and hopefully the draw gods are on my side next year, but I just absolutely can't wait. And so it'll be fun to start getting into that season. And I'm going to use onX Maps a ton for my scouting and my research. Just an absolutely awesome program. So thanks to onX Maps for sponsoring the podcast. Getting ready, I'm going to head over, I'm going to touch bases with Eastmans here. I think in the next couple weeks, I'm going to run over and record some podcasts over there, and I got some good ones coming up. I got to play catch up here for a little bit, as I've been playing hooky for the last 2 weeks and hunting like a madman, which is just so fun. But so I'm going to start recording some. I got some really good guests lined up. Going to do this solo podcast here today. and then try to squeak in a run here and then get back. And I've got another one tonight, and a bunch of podcasts and really good guests coming up. So I just can't wait to keep working hard at this podcast, get over to the Eastmans office and hear about a lot of those guys' hunts and catch up with them. So should be just awesome. So today's podcast, I want to talk, like, where do I even start with this deal? So I just got back from a Ohio whitetail hunt, and I went out and stayed with Clint Casper out there, and he's got a bunch of farms he's got permission on, and just trying to do, this is how most of the hunters in the United States hunt, is for whitetails and out of a tree stand. And I can see why now. I've always been a spot and stalk hunter, and even in Montana here, when I hunt whitetails, I usually spot and stalk them and sit for some spot for a little bit of time and wait and be patient, and then I'll move again. But I've never really played the tree stand game. And so I get out there, and it's just all this rolling farmlands, and there's so much feed, beans and corn out there, and any of the rolling lands is all made farmlands and in tracts of different private pieces of property that you have to have permission on to hunt, and it's just the way it's set up out there. But Clint has permission on a bunch of different farms and his own family farm, and a bunch of really cool spots. And then so there are all these rolling farmlands, and then they have these hollows or these deep draws or depressions, and in these deep draws or depressions, you can't do any farming, and so they're all these hardwood draws, and they're hardwoods, oak, maple, a bunch of deciduous trees, and even a few pines in there, and they had all lost their leaves, and so the leaves are all over the ground. You can't move through there quietly. You hear everything, and so you can't really stalk your way through as it's thicker country, and they're small tracts of land. I know one of the farms I was hunting was like 16 or 18 acres, and so you go spotting and stalking through that, pretty soon you've chased every deer off his farm, and he's looking at me like, hey, what the heck are you doing? There's no more deer left there. But it's weird, their populations, they have a good population of deer per square mile. There's deer everywhere, but they're just not condensed. I'm used to them being so condensed over in our Montana river bottoms, and where you find deer, you may see 50 or 100 of them. I mean, there was a couple days I sat in a stand all day long for 12 hours, and I saw 3 deer, or I saw 2 deer. And there was other days I sat in there where I saw 20 and 4 or 5 different bucks. But we finally got on this good farm. I had a good buck walk by me the first day, and he just walked by in some thick stuff, and I drew on him. At one point I had a range, and he was like 55 or 56 right in there, but there was just so many limbs in there, and so I drew back, had a good range on him, and then I grunted to stop him, and he just took 2 more steps before he stopped, and he stopped just with a tree right in his vitals, and I could just see his shoulder and his head, and then I could see the back half of him. And I had a couple inches, you could almost slide an arrow in between the tree and his shoulder, but it just wasn't an ethical shot. I was going to end up hitting him in the shoulder, nicking the tree, and so it just wasn't a good shot. And so I passed on the shot, kept it full draw, and then the buck started walking again, and I stopped him again, and there was just too many limbs. You just couldn't find a window to shoot through, and so he kept walking, and then there was no shot from there on out. And he was just like a good heavy 8, but a big one, nice and heavy and bladed fronts and nice and wide out past his ears. Really nice whitetail. I would have been pumped with him. And then just played the game, sitting in a stand all week long, choosing different places in hollows where these bucks move through, and then these different farms. And I had one farm that was producing pretty good, where Clint had seen a really good buck on there and had photos of him, and it was actually the buck Clint was trying to kill. And such a good guy, just puts me in the best spots after the deer he's been after all year long. And I sat on that farm quite a bit, and then finally the last day I saw the buck we were after. And this buck, I mean, I can't even do justice to it with words. It's it was, so it's a 6-point with some stickers. So I've started calling whitetail by their eastern count now. I used to always call them a 3 on top or a 2 on top, but since hunting whitetails around, you kind of got to use the lingo, and so everybody knows what you're talking about. And so I've adopted the lingo of an 8 or a 10 or a whatever it is. But he's a 6. but he's a 6 with giant eye guards, like probably 10-inch eye guards and stickers. And then he's just so wide and his frame's so big and he's heavy. And I've always said that about whitetails, is mass makes the deer. But looking at Clint's sheds, I mean, it is incredible. Some of those 8s and like this 6, just so heavy and so wide and palmated and just an absolute specimen of a whitetail. Well, I finally saw him the last day, and he crossed 130 yards out from me. I wanted to get down from that tree stand and stalk that buck so bad, but you've got your harness and your steps, and these deer are so switched on, too. I couldn't believe how switched on they are, and it's not hunting private like I think of it. There's all these smaller tracks, and they have such a long hunting season that these deer, they get pressured so much, and so it's like hunting high-pressured whitetails, and these deer are switched on. Like in the tree stand, any squeak or any movement, and they're looking up at you, and so you really got to be good, even when they walk by your stand, to be able to get drawn and not have them see you. And like the beans I was sitting on this bean farm, and the does and smaller bucks that would come through. I mean, you got to hold absolutely still, or they'll pick you up and pick you out up there. But this buck came by at 130 yards, and I wanted to get down so bad and stalk this buck. And in hindsight, I probably should have. And Clint wouldn't have minded. You kind of think, your buddy that's getting you on this place, you definitely don't want to make him upset or do something that he doesn't want, as he's letting you on his land and you're staying at his house. And Clint was just a great host, and really set me up right. And he had a bunch of tree stands hung for me. I don't know how many different sets he had, so I had so many different options. He worked really hard to try to get me an opportunity, and so crossed at 130 yards. And I just didn't feel like I could get down without that buck seeing me, or by the time I got down and made a play, I thought he's going to be in the thick trees and in those leaves. And so I thought, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. You got to be patient. Just wait for this thing. And so I figured he was rutting pretty good, and there was 20 different does I saw that morning. And so I thought, I'm just going to stay here, and hopefully this buck, comes back out and walks by me, or comes out in the evening. And so I did an all-day 12-hour sit, and you'd think I could take some cold coming from Montana where it's 0 degrees, and I can, it wasn't that big a deal, but a 12-hour sit, and it was a north wind, 15, 20 miles an hour all day, and yeah, it's probably only 30 degrees, but a wet 30 degrees, I have never, just holding still for that long, it is tough to keep warm. I had to wear twice as many clothes as I thought I should, or that I would in Montana, even if it was well below 0, but that just sitting there still as can be for that many hours, boy, that's cold. So I worked hard all day just to keep warm, and waiting for that buck to come back out, and he never showed himself again. And I did have some chances at some smaller bucks, some 3-year-olds, some 8s that came by, but just not the big and heavy I was looking for. But a great experience, and fun to just experience something different. Me, I'm always into new experiences and new tactics, hunting a new place on planet Earth, and just trying to learn from it. And so, the lessons I took away were great. I learned a lot about patience sitting in a tree for that long. Oh my gosh. But you have to be patient with critters, whether you're hunting whitetails or whether you're hunting muleys or, anything out west. Sorry guys, I got this fly in my recording studio here, which is my downstairs room. He was just trying to land on me there. We're getting into wintertime. I shouldn't have any flies around, but that thing was after me. But yeah, just new experiences and new place on planet Earth, and just trying to figure it all out. But I did take away some good lessons on patience and the chess game of those whitetails, where you're going to sit, and trying to use your most recent information, and then just quizzing Clint like a madman. I swear I'm like a interrogation officer at some point, just interrogating him just on information and where he's seen bucks and how he's seen him move through and what I saw and what I should do different. And so I really learned a lot from that. It's just picking Clint's brain. He's a whitetail expert. He's been there his whole life and just has a bunch of really good bucks on the wall, and And then a ton of great sheds. I'd look at his sheds every single night and pick them up, and just giant 10s and giant 8s and extras and weird ones. And so it was really cool. I got even farther into the whitetail game than I've ever been. And I've always appreciated whitetails, and we have them here in Montana, even though I usually hunt muleys, as I'm just so sick for muleys. But I did learn a lot, and so it just one of those things. You're not going to fill every tag you have, and and also I've got to pay my dues. I don't know if I deserve a big whitetail at this point. Like, yeah, I spent 7 days all day long in the tree stand, but I don't know if that warrants a giant buck. As Clint probably does 30 or 40 days, 50 days in a stand throughout the year as they have a long hunting season. So it's just one of those deals where I got to pay my dues and earn my opportunity. But I did enjoy that tree stand game as it's something different. But I do love the Western game. Let me tell you, that's my niche, and that's what I love to do. And so right before that, let's see, I don't even think I told you guys, maybe I mentioned it, but I went out with my daughter on that adventure hunt, and I was going to have her here on the podcast to join in on me, but it's just our schedules are so crazy, and she's been practicing basketball, and then she's got school, and timing just hasn't worked out. But I'll get her on the podcast here once with my family, and maybe get my wife on there or something, and so you guys can meet her and get some insight into it. But she just had her birthday yesterday. She turned 14, and so we've done these adventure hunts. This is the second year in a row, and so we went out, just me and her, and drove out. We drove to a spot like 5-6 hours away where they really got some good mule deer populations here in Montana, and started hunting, and it was good. Got down in there, and we found a giant buck with big backs that I actually ended up hunting quite a bit with my bow. But we found that buck, and he was like 50 yards over the fence of where we could hunt. And so we kind of stayed there and waited for a while to see if he'd cross. It was really cold. That morning, I think it was maybe 10 or 15 degrees, something like that, with the wind blowing and snowing. And so cold morning, but we sat there and waited for that buck to see if we could get him to cross, and he never did cross. And so we just thought, well, let's just keep hunting. And so traveled around, grabbed some different vantage points, and then we spotted this really nice buck off this vantage point. And he was for Taylor, last year she killed a 3x4, and so we're just looking for a decent buck. We've got 3 days to hunt, and any 3-point or 4-point will do. Any good decent one. We passed up a 4-point that morning. He's a 4-point, but really young, like a 2-year-old deer, and I just told Taylor, like, it's up to you, but I think we can do better. And so she agreed, and we knew where that buck was, so we could always come back and hunt him. And just kept looking, and then we found that buck across the fence, and then grabbed a different vantage point and spotted this really nice 3-point. It was a pretty nice wide one, would have been Taylor's biggest deer, and so we made a stalk and made a play on it, came around it, had a good wind. I saw the buck at maybe 150 yards or somewhere right in there, 180, maybe it was 150 yards or so, but just see his head and his neck, and we couldn't get a good rest. And I had shooting sticks, which really helps kids for getting steady, and helps adults for that matter. My cousin later in the hunt, he used the sticks. I've got my dad with a set of them, and so those sticks really work good, but we had the sticks and tried to get set up on them and couldn't get set up, and started circling around, and I don't know what happened. Some of our scent must have drifted down in that bottom, even though we had a good wind in our face or something, because I know they didn't see us. I could see all the does, and we were sneaking around trying to get different angles, and we ended up busting them, and they took off. And so, it's like a little bit of a letdown, but, I'm used to it, and Taylor's getting used to it for sure. And just say, well, Taylor, we were close. That was exciting, We almost got a shot at him. We're just trying to get the right shot and didn't quite work out. And so got back up and moved down and grabbed another vantage point, and I spotted a really nice buck across, a nice 4-point. And at this point, we're like a mile away from where we had seen that buck. Maybe not even that. Maybe 3/4 of a mile away or so. So I told Taylor, well, let's go get a little bit closer and let's keep an eye on this buck and see if we can make a play on him. And he kind of disappeared into this big thick of timber, and so we were just going to grab a vantage point and sit across from him. And by now the temperatures are warming up. It's 30 degrees or so, and sun's coming out, so it's pretty nice. So we're going to go sit on this opposing hillside and kind of look for this nice 4-point. We start hiking, and we're about to this vantage point. I look over and I spot this buck just bedded off the side of this hill, and he's just bedded there, and he's kind of looking in our direction but doesn't see us. I spotted him before he spotted us, and so me and Taylor, we kind of work around him and have Taylor look at him, and it's actually the same 3-point that we were just chasing. He had made this long loop around the hillside and come all the way around, and he was laying in these big rocks, and he was in this bed in these big rocks. And so we got Taylor set up, and at first she just wasn't steady enough, and she just told me, I'm not steady enough. And I said, well, I had her on a kneeling shot on the sticks, and we were trying to shoot over this sagebrush, and we could see him in his bed and had a good shot at him in his bed. But I just told Taylor, I said, he doesn't know we're here. We can keep moving around. We can get you set up right. And so we got her to a sitting position, we couldn't quite get over the sage and couldn't quite get a clear shot. And finally, I think enough time had passed, and Taylor kind of took charge of the situation, as far as what she was going to shoot. Couldn't get her sitting. I said, well, maybe we can crawl down here and get her laid down. She goes, Dad, I think I can hit this thing from a kneeling position. And I said, well, let's get you set up and take a look at it. And so back set up into a kneeling position over the sticks, and I think she had just had enough time where her heart rate calmed down, and she looked at it at the kneeling position. She said, yeah, Dad, I can hit this deer. And I said, are you sure? We can get you down. We can get you set up in a different position. At this time, we're maybe 125 away from this buck or something like that. And I said, well, we can get you set up different. She goes, no, I can hit him. I'm steady. And I said, well, go ahead. And, we did a bunch of practice before season, as we always do, shooting positions, and got her familiar with her rifle. We shoot those low kick shells. I mean, she weighs 75 pounds, but she shoots that 7mm 08 and shoots these low kick shells. And we just try to get close and kill them. Like, she can shoot. She shot her deer last year at 225 or so. So she can shoot, and we haven't really tried much or practiced much further than that. So we try to keep her to about 200 in, but yeah, 125 yards, set up on her kneel. She looked at me and said, Dad, I can hit this buck. And I said, okay, squeeze on it, and she squeezed on the trigger and just whoop, just hit that buck absolutely perfect. That buck never picked up his head. He never tried to get out of his bed. You couldn't have walked up and put that bullet in a better spot. She absolutely nailed him. So that was cool. She got excited, and I was excited, and so we hugged and went over to look at her buck, and yeah, her best buck to date. Just a really nice 3-point, and had some eye guards, if I remember right, and like a 3-year-old buck, maybe a 4-year-old buck, but her best to date. And we got to share the hunt together, and then process together. And she's helped me butcher over the last couple of years, and I haven't really had her gut a deer yet, which when you harvest your own animal, it's part of the process. But she's been so young, or it's been cold, and I like to butcher these things. I don't know about you guys, but I do this gutless method. I just don't drag deer anymore because I don't shoot them close enough to the road to drag them. So I'm always either quartering them or boning them out. And so I do this boneless method, and I've got my system just down pat where, gosh, I can do a deer by myself in about 40 minutes or half an hour or so and have it all loaded up. So we did the boneless method, and so, last year when I did her buck, I had her hold legs for me, and I kind of skinned and worked it. But this year, able to get her own Havalon knife, which is spooky. That thing's just like a razor blade. But she's so good butchering and with knives, and I've taught her the right way to cut away, never cut towards herself. So she's just super safe, and like I've never cut myself with a halo. I'm just super careful with them, and I've tried to teach her that same way. And so, what I do is I start with the deer laying on his side, and then I take both legs, and so I had her work the front, I work the back, and then you cut around, like the bottom end of the leg, like past the joint, so then you can cut off the joint, and then I skin up the inside of the legs, and then skin it back, and you're always working to fold that hair over to where you're not getting any hair on the meat. Keep it as clean as possible. But I start there, and I skin, and then I make a slit down the inside of the leg, and then I work the skinning process from, that lower part of the leg and work it up towards the backbone, and then I make a slit like up the belly where you'd gut them, but I just cut the skin. And so I do that front and that back leg, skin the belly, and then I just roll all that hide over until I get to the spine. And once I do that, then I can remove the quarters with a knife. And the front shoulders are really easy. You just cut in the void in there, and you just cut until it gives way, and then the quarter just comes off. Take the bottom end of the leg off at the joint there, or you bone them out. And when I bone them out, there's like the shoulder blade, and then there's this line of bone that runs up the middle, and I'll take either side of that, and basically I can get the front shoulder off in 2 big chunks of meat. And then the hind end, I can take that off. I usually take that in 2 chunks. So what I do first is I take the sirloin. First off, taking the back quarter off. So that one's a little bit trickier. What you got to do is you got to find the ball socket, and I've just done it so many times that it just comes natural to me. But what I do is I start cutting on the inside of the leg and get down in there until you find the ball socket, and then move around towards the back, and you're just skinning it really tight to the bone there where you don't leave anything, and then it comes all the way off from that ball socket. And then I lay that out, and then I lay it on a game bag, and then I take the sirloin first, which is the big round one that looks like a football. And I kind of split it where the muscles split themselves, where you're not even really cutting into meat, and then you kind of carve it down to that main leg bone, and then just skin that off and get that sirloin off. And then the next one's the round, and that's the big one around. And same thing around that. I just skin it around that bottom bone, separate it from that calf muscle all the way down and in, and get that piece of the meat off. And in most states, too, you have to leave sex attached to the animals, so that's a little tricky. It's taken me some time to get my system, but basically what I do is I leave a thin strip of hide that goes all the way up the big piece of meat that goes all the way down and connects the balls and I leave that attached to the big chunk of meat. So I'm all legal and good to go. But anyways, we processed it together, gave Taylor her own knife, and we worked it. I had her take off all the quarters, had her, once I get the quarters off, then I'll take the back strap, slice along that spine in there, and then cut that, carve that right off the top of the ribs there, take that whole back strap off, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. And then I get the tenderloins. I actually get those with the guts in them. I'm able to kind of sit him on his side or sometimes straight on his belly, and then right along the spine right there, and it's in between the back hip and then the front where the ribs start. It's in between that section, and then you just kind of cut along there, and you're able to find that chunk of meat, and then you're able to cut along the bottom half and kind of separate it from the stomach right there, and you're able to get those tenderloins out of there without gutting. So we processed that whole thing and packed it out together and got it back to the truck. And this is the first day, but you just can't pass one on the first day that you'd shoot on the last. And we do only have 3 days, and we missed the youth season this year. And so, she's out in general rifle season with everybody else. And so, it's out there with the Orange Army, general rifle season in Montana in a really good mule deer spot. So, I was a little worried about the pressure, and, we just... to get her set up right on a buck and then have a good experience, be able to work, along those draws and coulees and not run into a bunch of guys or have her feel nervous, but mission accomplished. We nailed it. Able to kill that buck, get him back to the truck. And then, we'd driven so far from the house. It's like, well, Taylor, what do you want to do now? You want to hunt with your dad? And I had stuck my bow in. I almost didn't even bring my bow because I was just so focused on her hunting. But, I did throw my bow in, and I love hunting with my bow. It's something that just grabbed a hold of me years ago, and it's not like I don't know. I don't want this to come out wrong, because there's definitely nothing wrong with using a rifle, especially during rifle season. But there's nothing wrong with rifle hunting, and it's fun. I have nothing against it. It's challenging. A lot of times it can be challenging to find the right animal, and I just felt like I've spent so many years bow hunting, and I've improved my skill so much to where, is it a challenge for me? Well, yeah, it'd probably be a challenge to find the right buck and be able to harvest them, but I just feel like the essence of the hunt for me is getting in close. Like I really feel like that is true hunting to me. It's like inside that 100 yards, making the right moves. It's like this thrill that I can't get any other way, and I just... I'd shoot something with my rifle, and it's been 10, 11, 12 years since I've shot something with a rifle. And like I say, nothing against it. Rifle hunting is fun and enjoyable, and I love doing it with family. I love doing it with friends. And if that was my only choice to hunt, I'd be hunting with a rifle too. But I just get so much more out of the experience with my bow and arrow and getting close. And I said a long time ago, I'd kill something with my rifle, and I go, oh boy, this sure would have been cool with my bow. And after I finally came to the conclusion, like, I'd rather kill a smaller animal with my bow than I would a bigger one with my buck, because it means more to me. And also, I'm like constantly keeping in this bow hunter's mindset. I'm always thinking about the wind and how do I get close, and I'm looking at the terrain to where I can get into 50 yards or 40 yards of this animal. And it was like if I was rifle hunting, I'd almost get out of that thought process to where now I'm just trying to get inside 200, 300, 400 yards and lay down and get a shot. Not that you can't get close with your rifle and get it done like me and my daughter do, or, that I do with family nowadays. But, it was taking a lot out of it for me. Like, that getting close and trying to outsmart that animal in tight, like was just the ultimate to me. And like hunting the rut now, the rut with my bow and arrow is some of the funnest hunting I doing. Like being, you think of like the elk rut and being into those bulls bugling. Well, it's the same experience with mule deer and hunting the rut, where you get to watch them posturing towards other bucks and chasing does around, and they just throw caution into the wind, and they just you never know. Every group of does may have that monster buck with them, and a lot of times they're splitting off that doe and they're going into the cover and trying to breed. But being in that experience, it means the world to me. And to have my bow in my hands and playing that game in close quarters, it's so thrilling to me, and it's such a cool encounter that I feel like I'd miss out on it if I hunted with a rifle. I mean, you wouldn't. You see the same things, but God, just that in close on a big rutted up buck, it gets me so excited. So nothing against hunting with a rifle, and really I think everybody should hunt with a rifle. And I think, if you set yourself up where you're bow hunting during rifle season, you better be set up to fail. You better be willing to eat a tag. And I think guys also need to gain that experience with a rifle and have that success. Like my daughter, she bow hunts and she's a great bow shot. It just takes so much work and so much effort to kill one with a bow that you don't see that payoff and you don't fall in love with it. Like, you got to fall in love with it by seeing a little success, and so with a rifle is perfect for her. She's got a little bit more range on it. We can go down there and expect to harvest a deer, at least expect to have an opportunity at it. And I think it's the same thing with everything else. Like hunting is this ever-evolving learning circle where you continue to get better at it the more you do it. And I think finally you just reach a point where, I see enough animals and I see enough mule deer that I know I can get opportunities with my bow. I know I can locate enough where I can locate a mature buck, and I'm going to get chances with my bow. And that's what flipped the switch for me, is like, okay, I know I can get enough opportunities that I can harvest one of these things. Now I just need to commit to it. And I think it's that same thing where you need to gain experience. And like hunting bulls with my rifle in the late season, those were some of the best experiences I ever had. It's such a great opportunity to get out and be outdoors and be learning. They're high pressured elk, and you're out there trying to find them in this general rifle season, high pressure environment. It's dang tough. And I learned a lot in those years hunting with a rifle. And same thing hunting muleys with a rifle. I learned a lot. But I think there comes this point where you reach this level of skill where all of a sudden it isn't as big a challenge for you. For me to shoot a big mule deer buck with my bow, I've got enough spots and see enough of them per season. And I'm not saying it's a gimme or anything like that. I'd have to work at it, but it isn't the same challenge for me. The hunting one with my bow and arrow during general rifle is this huge degree of difficulty. And so when I harvest one, I mean, it means the absolute world to me, and it's such a thrilling encounter. So anyway, hopefully I explained that right, where I don't offend anybody, because I do truly believe everybody, should be rifle hunting. But for me, I've just reached this point where I want to be bow only. Hunting things with a bow means more to me. I know every year I'm going to get enough critters to fill my freezer and feed my family through the winter. And it makes the hunting season last for me too. And it's just, I mean, for me, it comes down to those thrilling close encounters. That it just means the world to me. So anyways, off my high horse, but I have my bow down there. Taylor shot her deer first day. And so I said, well, Taylor, you want to hunt with me and run the camera? And she said, yeah. And so I gave her my camera. We weren't going to try to film it or anything like that, but just have her, take photos as we're going along. And I took a bunch of photos of her as we did this hunt. But, also, it's like this new opportunity for her to be able to have this nice camera. And she uses my old camera, which is it's a Sony, it's not the A6000, that's what I'm running now, but it's like the A3, it's the previous model to it, but it takes really good photos, and it's got a really good lens, and she plays around with that quite a bit. And so I gave her my camera with the good lens on. I said, take pictures of whatever you see, whatever you want, whatever interests you, and we'll take a look at them at the end. And so we started hunting with my bow, and it was dynamite hunting. I mean, let's see, what were our dates? I got to remember the dates because the dates were so good. But we were just the very beginning of November. So I want to say like the 2nd or the 3rd. And I'm telling you, as I always hunt early, and I'll hunt all the way through the season. It's still open now this Thanksgiving weekend here in Montana. And in fact, I talked to Tyler Boschma that was he's been on the podcast, and we might record another one if he has time coming through, but he's going to go out there and hunt muleys late. And so still hunting them late. I'm still seeing guys put down good bucks, and they still rut late, but that early time, and we were in the pre-rut. Not every group of does had bucks. In fact, you looked over a lot of groups of does that didn't have bucks and kind of think, gosh, are they rutting or are they not? But as you kept moving through, eventually one of those groups of does would have a giant buck with them in it. And then as we got into my family hunt, I mean, we hit the rut absolutely perfect. But I'm going to try to plan earlier dates, like take my time, when I take a week or whatever on these earlier dates. It's just good hunting. But so we kept hunting. That buck that me and Taylor had seen in the morning, that giant buck that was across the fence where we couldn't hunt 50 yards, we actually packed that buck back up to the truck up there, and I started glassing around. We grabbed another vantage point, started glassing around. Well, I found that buck across the way. And he's a good buck, man. He's super heavy, an older buck, and great big backs. And we saw him across the way, and he was rutting some does. And there's another 3-point there. They were in this timber patch, and so I said, Taylor, there's a good buck over there. Let's go give him a try. And Taylor was just a trooper. I hiked her a bunch of miles, and I also got to be careful that I don't grind her too hard. That I don't, I've got to kind of cater the experience to her. Like I like pushing hard, and she does too. She likes pushing hard too, but I can't take her for a 20-mile hike during the day. I'm just going to burn her out. She's not going to have any fun, And so I got to kind of cater it to her, but we hunted hard. And so we had that buck spotted, and we had to drop down and cross 2 really big canyons and get up above that buck and come around it. And came around where I thought those deer were going to be, and right below us, there's some does feeding right there. I said, oh, Taylor, here's some does right here. Come take a look. Come to the edge. And she came to the edge there and looked at the does, and they're right in bow range. And then pretty soon here I see this buck coming, and it was the wrong buck. It was actually the 3-point. I don't know where that big one with big backs got off to, but that 3-point was right down below us about 45 yards or so. And I passed on him, but Taylor got to see him in bow range. And, she said later, gosh, Dad, if that was me, I would have shot that buck with my bow. And I told Taylor, I said, yeah, it was a really nice buck, Taylor. I said, but I'm coming back here in a week or so, and we got your deer, so we'll let him live another year and see if he grows up and keep hunting. And so went back, couldn't locate that buck with big backs the next day. Let's see, just kept hunting, kept seeing some bucks, passing on some bucks. And then I did spot a monster the next day. Just a really good, heavy, big buck, and I could tell it was an older buck, but I didn't get a chance to get the scope on him, as I just saw him working up this ridge. And so we went, and it couldn't have taken us more than 10 minutes to get to where he was. We had hiked down that morning to this vantage point and was seeing a bunch of deer, but saw this buck. Couldn't have taken more than 10 minutes to get to him, and we crept over the top, us two, and looking around, and we never could relocate that buck. We searched around for a couple hours in there. He was somewhere. He wasn't too far. I think he was just rutting. He was by himself cruising country, and he must have just moved out of that drainage before we got there or something, but he got away from us. So anyways, we had the success of Taylor's buck, and so we called it a hunt and drove back and got some really cool photos of it. And I mean, the highlight of my hunt season, being able to share that hunt with my daughter and just have some great conversations too. You know, as you drive in so many hours to get out there, you can just kind of talk about things and be honest with them, and you know, just give them advice here or there, and you know, just trying to set them up to be successful in life, you know. And so it's pretty neat to be able to do that and camp out with her, and so really enjoyed it. And get back and had a few days of work to get done, and then I'm going on this hunt. I'm going with my family, and this is really cool. So I've got an uncle and a cousin that are coming out from Washington, and my uncle did not draw a deer tag this year, so it was just my cousin that had a deer tag. And then my other uncle that lives here in Montana, my Uncle Roger, and then my dad, and then we had another family friend come, and so we went and set up the wall tent out there, and you know, we're just basing this. I've hunted this place for like 10 years, and I can't tell you how much time I have invested, how many, you know, probably 100 days out there hunting, and I can't tell you how many hours, how much gas money I have, you know, cruising around, learning new areas, finding deer populations, hiking in, finding vantage points. But I've just got this network of spots now that I've just learned over the years from spending time out there, and so to be able to share this hunt with my family is so cool. And so we go back out, and we actually went out. My dad was just so sick for it. He was so ready to get hunting. And so my uncle and cousin weren't coming in until Monday, I think. But it got to be the weekend, and me and Dad, we work. Dad's my partner with the construction company. So we usually work 5 days a week and then take the weekend off. And but he loves hunting mule deer, and with his rifle, it's so much fun for him. And so, you know, it got to be Friday, and heck, I think we took Friday off and made our traveled over there, and we thought, well, we'll scout for a couple days before Chris and Jay, which is my other uncle and cousin that are coming out from Washington. We'll scout for a couple days, and in that way we just get enough hunting in, as they're only going to stay through Friday or so, maybe Saturday at the latest. So they had 4 or 5 days to hunt, and so we figured we'd go out early, get the wall tent set up, and I just love this wall tent hunting with family. And I mean, so we get out there, and so we go out the first day, and my Uncle Roger and the other family friend, they're going to hunt together the first day. They've got some spots that we've hunted before, and then I told Dad, I said, oh, I've got this spot down here. Like, let's go check out this spot this morning. I said, it was really good last weekend with Taylor. And so we cruise down and get down in there, and it's gumbo-y, it's gnarly, even just getting to the spot where you can hike from, but it's frozen that morning. And so, of course, what am I going to do? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to get into this spot, you know, and we'll deal with the mud later. And so we get in there, and just before first light, we hike out to this little vantage point out there, and lights start coming on. We spot a couple does, and a couple does over here, and all of a sudden I look over and I spot this group of does, and it's just got this monster buck with them, just this giant, deep forked, heavy, older deer, you know, and I'm hunting with my bow, Dad's hunting with his rifle, but, you know, I saw this buck and I said, Dad, you got to take a look at this buck. And, you know, I've got tons of years to hunt. I've killed some really nice bucks, and I've got a bunch more really nice bucks in my future, and I know how much Dad loves to hunt mule deer, and he's killed some good ones over the years. But this would be his best buck to date, you know. And so I have him look. Dad looks 2 seconds, but he's such a nice guy, and he's so into the team hunting. And, you know, he wants to make sure, like, you know, I'm not just taking him down there so he can kill this giant buck. And so he kind of hems and haws and says, well, you know, and he says, I'd love to shoot that buck, but he said, you know, you can stalk it. You can go with your bow and go stalk. And I said, oh, no, Dad. I said, you know, it's your turn. It's a giant buck you want to shoot. It's the first day. You want that buck. Let's go kill him. Let's like you shoot him. Let's go kill that buck, you know. And so I finally convince him that it's his buck and that he should go shoot it, you know. And so, yeah, we made just a short play after this buck off the vantage point and set up and have him in range. And gosh, what was he, about 200 yards or so? Or I don't think he was any closer. Maybe 200, 220, I think is what he was. That's exactly what he was, 220. And Dad set up, he's got this new deer rifle he's built, this new 270, just got a sweet scope on, sweet setup, good ballistics. And he's actually gone down in caliber. He shot this 300 for years, and he shoots it well, but just wanted a little bit smaller caliber, a little bit more accurate. And this 270 fits the bill. I mean, you sit at 200 yards, and you put 3 inside 100 inches pretty easy. So he's got this new rifle he's all excited about. But we get him set up, and, we get him set up, and that buck is rutting this doe, and ruts are out of sight, but you can still see a lot of the does on the hillside. And Dad looks at me, and we kind of go, God, should we make a play? Should we try to go around on them? And I looked at the situation, just said, man, let's sit right here. All his does are up there. He's gonna come back up out. Like, let's not screw this up. You're set up in a perfect spot. And so, it wasn't maybe 5 minutes later. I saw the doe come popping out of the bottom. I said, Dad, he's gonna be behind her. And then all of a sudden, that buck came up behind her. Sure enough, came up, and Dad just put him on it, put it on him. But boom, one shot and just down. Just dumped that buck, made a perfect shot, and it was pretty cool. I did Eastmans Elevated. I did a story on a live story and collected some video of Dad walking up to his buck and took some really good photos for him. And he was so pumped. I mean, it's his biggest buck to date, and he just loves hunting mule deer, And so it's first morning, first day, Dad's tagged out, He kind of laughed and joked with him, and boy, you didn't have to work too hard at that one. But anyways, just an awesome experience, and so cool to get Dad his best buck to date. And it means way more to me, helping him harvest that great deer than it would have me shooting it with a bow. I mean, it don't get me wrong, I would have loved to kill that deer with a bow and arrow, but to be able to share in this experience with my dad and have him be the shooter, it's just the ultimate. So really cool. We get that buck down. Gosh, we keep hunting and scouting, and I mean, the rut is just in full force, but the pressure isn't on at all. There's nobody around, it doesn't seem like, and we're able to hike and get away from guys, and there just isn't that many hunters out there. Everybody here in Montana, you get a general elk and a general deer season tag, and then everybody hunts elk early and then hunts mule deer late during the rut. And the deal is people want to time the rut right. They don't want to go out there and see pre-rut action where you don't see many bucks, and so they try to time it right in the center of the rut. Well, we hit right at the beginning of the rut, because the weekend before, me and Taylor saw just a little bit of rutting activity and a lot of pre-rut and a lot of does by themselves. I mean, this whole week, I can't tell you. We were seeing 15, 20 bucks a day. It was crazy. Insane rutting action, and every group of does had a buck with them. And if they didn't have a buck, it was because there wasn't a buck around in the area. But we kept hunting, and it just absolutely insane hunting. And so we got Dad his buck, and then I started focusing with my bow. We got Dad's buck. We hunted that day. We went down. And then I hunted a spot with my bow later that day, and Dad glassed for me. And I went on 2 different stalks that day, and I'm looking for a heavy next level buck to shoot. And we just shot Dad's buck, 180-inch deer that we just killed. So, I've got that one fresh in my mind. And we get down to this inn and get out to this vantage point and look around, and all of a sudden I spot that big heavy buck from the weekend before that I had seen with my daughter Taylor. Giant backs, big heavy mass, and I looked at it. I said, it may be more massive than your buck, Dad. I mean, he won't score quite as good, but it's a 170-inch deer and a big heavy one, dark heavy horns, and then giant backs always get me going. I love giant backs on a mule deer. It just makes them look so tall. So, anyways, we had that one with the giant backs, and I had him bedded in a really good spot, and worked all the way around him with the wind right, came over the top and the basin he was in, and I just couldn't find him. He had changed beds, and I glassed everywhere in there, keeping the wind right and different points, and then even worked out farther up he's up like a spur draw, looked up the main draw, glassed everywhere, just couldn't turn him up. But I got a good play on him. He just wasn't there when I got there. Wasn't the first, won't be the last mule deer that gives me the slip. In fact, won't even be the last one that day. So I get back to the vantage point, and we get looking around, and pretty soon we spot this other buck. And this other buck, God, he's got deep forks. He's heavy horned. He's just a killer looking mule deer, and so he's rutting some does, and so I send it again down this drainage. I've already made one play all the way across this huge drainage, and miles in between, but it's not too gnarly. It's kind of breaky country, kind of big, huge draws and spur draws off of them. I just love that country. It's kind of like some lowland country for muleys. And I love hunting the mountains for muleys, don't get me wrong. But this lowland country with these high populations, it's pretty fun too. But glass over and spot this this deep fork buck. And God, he's got good forks front, good forks back. And told Dad, I said, man, I think I'll be happy with that buck if I harvest him. That's a good looking deer. And so we watch him for a little bit, and then I make a play on that one. I move all the way around him and come up over the top, and he's not there. And I see Dad giving me hand signals, that point down the draw or down the ridge. And so I move down the ridge and keep glassing, can't turn up that buck. I turned up some other smaller bucks down there, but couldn't turn up that one I was after. So finally returned back up, and then we had to make our way out of there, and everything had melted. It had snowed all day on us. It was snowing when we shot Dad's bucks, snowing when I made these stalks, and that road turned to absolute gumbo. And so I had to get after it. I got that new truck I was telling you guys about, and man, oh man, did I have to light that thing up and do some driving to get out of there. I thought we were going to have to stay the night down in there, which is no big deal at all. But, we got my uncle and family friend back at the wall tent, and so you're trying to make it back, and it's like, well, I'll push it as far as the road lets me, and if it gets too gnarly, I'm not going to slide my truck into a tree trying to get out of here. I'll just sleep tonight, let it freeze over, and come out in the morning. But it was a little white-knuckled getting out of there, but that's a little fun. It's a little part of the adventure too. And you got Dad's giant buck in the back, so we're feeling pretty good about things. But I make it out of there, white-knuckle my dad. I scare the heck out of my dad sometimes. He is always willing to go with me, and he's always willing to push it with me. So that was fun. I got out of there. I can't believe made it up the last hill up there and got out. Made it back to camp, and then the next day, surprise, surprise, Dad doesn't want to go back down that to that spot. He's just, is gnarly getting out of there. But me, it's all frozen now. It's like, well, Dad, if I don't come out tonight, I'm just gonna spend the night down in there. Whatever it takes, I'm gonna go in there. It's hot hunting. I saw those 2 shooters, besides the one we shot at yours, and multiple other bucks. By the way, it is just absolutely epic hunting. And so I get down in there and I start glassing around, and I spot quite a few bucks before I get to the last vantage. Let's see, I worked 2 different vantage points. I think my buck count was like 9 or 10 bucks, but I didn't see anything that was that older age class, some 3s and 4s, but nothing I was looking to shoot. And then I get up to this spot up there and glass over, and I see this nice heavy 3x4, and God, he's just an older deer. You can tell he's 5-6 years old, heavy horns, and I start looking at him and look at him through the scope and go, gosh, I think that's a deer I'll be happy with if I can get an arrow into that deer. And so I start playing the game with that deer, and I follow him a couple miles, like down into this huge draw and into the next draw, and I just kind of keep with him. And at one point, I had him at about 100 yards and slipped back over the hillside and tried to come around. Should have been in bow range, but he just kept moving. And he's just, he's on the prowl. He's by himself, and he's looking for does. And so I just got to keep moving with him. I got to keep with him, not let him see me. But it's just this epic, thrilling hunting where you got a buck you want to shoot, you got your bow in your hands, and you're just traveling with him. And you peek over the ledge. Is he there? Is he there? And then you glass, and you see him a couple 100 yards out, still moving. And so I get down, and I finally get down to this point, and I glass across, and he has found these does that he's rutting. And along with him, there's like all these does, like 10 or 15 does, and there's another giant 3-point down there, and another 3-point with big fronts that's not quite a shooter like a 3-4-year-old, but there's this giant one down there that's a 4 or 5-year-old deer, big, heavy, wide 3-point. And I like big 3-points. As long as they're mature, like I like big 3-points. If they're heavy horn, I don't care what they'll score. Like I just want a big mature one. And so I watched this 3-point and this 3x4, and they're rutting does, and they're similar in age class and similar in size. The 3-point was wider, or the 3x4 is wider. The 3-point was pretty wide and pretty tall. But I just watch them rutting these does, and I'm trying to come up with a plan, and I watch them for an hour or so, and finally they kind of move in position where I think I can get down below the deer and kind of be hidden in the draw, and then come around them, get my wind right, and come up on them as they're rutting. And so I kind of make this game plan, and I get down in that draw, and I, at times I'm inside of these deer, and I have about 60 yards I have to close in the wide open. And so I just keep my binos on the deer I can see, the does I can see, and the buck, and move really slow, take a couple steps and glass, move really slow and take a couple steps and glass. And so it took me a half an hour to make it across this opening or so. And then now I'm in the draw and now I'm hidden. So now I'm moving country and I'm trying to get around on them while they're still up on their feet and still rutting where I can make a play on them. So I start working around, or I get in that draw and I start moving, and all of a sudden I freeze and there's a buck right in front of me. Well, it's that buck with the giant backs I'd seen with Taylor. I'd hunted the day before, and he's by himself and he's traveling. So all of a sudden, this big backs buck that I just love the looks of this big back buck, big backs buck. So and he's working up this draw, and I got a chance to cut him off. And so I kind of move with him and then move around him and try to cut him off as he's coming up the draw. And I just get to this tree, and it's like this game. And I told you guys, I think on the last solo podcast or one of the podcasts, that when you're coming up over a rise, like that's when you really got to move slow and make sure you don't get busted and catch other deer, and don't just expect that deer to be in front of you. Be looking left and looking right so you don't get surprised, like it's your one chance. And so I'm kind of moving slow because I expect this buck to be anywhere, and then I catch him off to my left and he's coming up the draw. And so I set up by this tree and wasn't sure if he was going to come up my side or the far side. He ended up coming up the far side, and so he crossed right in front of me 90 yards, and then he got by that other 3-point I was telling you I was going to pass with the big front. So he crossed right in front of me at 90 yards, just nothing I could do. I had to just watch him cross by me. And yeah, he gets up by that 3-point, and they posture towards each other, and he kind of runs that 3-point off, and that 3-point doesn't have any does anymore. He's by himself, and so he kind of takes off over the ridge. The big backs buck chases him off, and then the buck keeps rolling up. And so I wait when he gets behind like this big bushy tree, and then I start trying to make tracks on him, just trying to close that distance and get a shot at him. And he was pretty switched on. He was really looking around, and I mean, my wind was right. I hadn't made any moves. He hadn't caught movement. Just a switched on older buck, rutting or no rutting. Like he isn't going to get shot, or he's trying to pay attention, to everything around him. Well, he got behind that big bushy tree, and I tried to close some distance. And at this point, I've watched him for 45 minutes in front of me work up this draw, and he was really taking his time, and gets behind this tree, and I try to make a move at him, and gosh dang it, he must have heard some grass, or maybe he saw me in between the limbs or something, but I ended up spooking this buck. I just hate messing up on a big buck I'd like to kill. That's when you want to get everything right, but it's just the way it is. It's the game I've chose in tight with a bow and arrow. But at this point, I mean, I have been hunting bucks for 3-4 hours. I mean, I talk about these bucks, but there's other 4-points I'm seeing and 3-points. I am in the absolute buck party. Like, in this drainage I'm in, there has to be 10 different bucks and probably 40 different does, and they're going everywhere, and I've seen 3 shooters that I'll shoot. The one with big backs, the 3x4, and then the big 3-point are all just giant older bucks that I'll kill. And so it is just epic deer hunting. And through my scope, I've watched them posturing towards each other. I've watched them chasing does. I've watched bucks traveling. Like, I mean, I am in full-blown muley rut, and I am in the spot. I am in the muley buck party in there, and I'm just playing the game. Like, this is dream hunting for me. Just like the day prior was dream hunting with Dad, killing his buck and getting those 2 stalks and seeing other bucks. But I am just in the spot, and it is the most epic rut hunting, and I have my bow. Like, I can't picture myself anywhere else in the world. This is as fun gets. I'm going for it, and you get so caught up in trying to get an arrow in one of these bucks and watching the rut that you just take a second and just like see like the, you wait years and years to find this kind of quality hunting, on public ground. During general rifle season, you're seeing this many deer and this many bucks and this kind of rutting activity, and I have my bow in my hands. Like, this is what I live for. This is absolutely what I live for. So anyways, I'm just so psyched on the moment and where I'm at, and I mean, I'm just smile ear to ear playing the game. And even though I busted that buck with big backs, I still got that big 3 and that big 3x4, and now they're up above me, and I'm in a pretty good position to roll around and make a play on them. So I roll to the top and get up there and just start cresting that hill, and I can't see any does, but that buck's right in front of me, that 3x4. And I think I got him at like 57 yards right there feeding. And so I wait on him and wait for a good quartering away shot. He quarters away at me pretty good. And I put one on him, shot executed perfect, settled my pin and pull, shot broke and just caught him perfect. Well, I caught him a little bit back, but the arrow was coming up through him, and so, and it wasn't that hard of an angle. I'm not even sure how I missed a little left, but a few inches here or there, that's just archery. And so, hit him a little bit back, but quartered up into him, definitely a lethal shot. And he takes off, and then I see him come over the next draw, and he makes it like 100 yards or so, maybe 150 yards, and beds up, definitely hurt. And so I think, man, he's going to die right in front of me. Right on. Arrowed this buck, epic hunting, like how killer is this? So I just take a moment and just soak it all in and kind of keep my eye on that buck. And there's another buck up on the hill. I start taking pictures of him and last back, and God, it's just taken that buck a while to die. I mean, all of a sudden an hour goes by and he's still alive, and it's like, man, I don't know if I got up there and caught the lungs. I must have just caught that liver, and it's definitely not guts. A gut shot, it takes them a little bit longer to get sicked up and will take them a while to die, but that liver shot sometimes it'll just take them a bit to die. And so, I always like to make a clean, quick kill, and so, I would have loved to make a perfect shot on that buck, and it was a good shot. It did quarter up in there, but I think I got liver, and so, I see that buck laying there, and it's just like, man, oh man, what do I do? You definitely don't want to spook him or bump him and have him go miles and miles and lose a deer, because he's going to die, but there too, you don't want him to just suffer and sit there and wait for him for multiple hours, but you're trying to make the right decision. And so finally I thought, man, he's pretty sick. I'm just going to sneak down there and put another arrow in him. And so I snuck down to 40 yards or so and put a closing shot on him, and he died fairly quick then. But yeah, I definitely don't like to see him suffer. It always means a ton to me when I can make a perfect shot and that thing's alive for about 15 seconds. It just adds to the experience. But it's bow hunting and it's archery, and you don't always get it the way you want it. And I had a good ethical shot on him where I can hit a tennis ball 10 out of 10 times at that distance. But his shot was a little right, or maybe he jumped the string too. Those mule deer. And I hate to, blaming it on jumping the string is the most common cause for miss, but they do jump your strings a lot. Whitetail, antelope, mule deer, even mule deer, big mule deer bucks, like 1 out of 4 will jump your string and leave you heartbroken. And, a lot of times they'll roll away from your arrow, and so that buck could have jumped my string, and that's kind of what I thought on the deal is why I got him back, is he got a step on me, but anyways, I'm not sure if he jumped my string or if my arrow was just a touch back, but did take him a while, but got that closing shot on him, and then now that he's dead, now I can be happy and celebrate the harvest of this great buck. But yeah, just a great big heavy 3x4. He doesn't score the best, but he's nice and wide and really heavy and older deer. I'm just so happy with him. I mean, to harvest that thing with my bow and have those epic couple days of mule deer hunting, or few days of mule deer hunting, just means the world. And with the bow, you just got to take your opportunities as they come. Like sure, would I loved 180-inch deer? You betcha, but you also got to risk not filling your tag at that point. Not that filling my tag every year is a big deal, but I mean, for me, my goal this year, and you guys maybe heard me talk about this last year after mule deer hunting, is I just wanted a mature buck, and I was able to accomplish it and get this buck arrowed. So just absolutely means the world to me. And so I took my time and just soaked up the whole encounter and the rut-eyed experience and just that awesome hunting. Like, I mean, it may be years again before I experience rut hunting like that at its absolute finest, at just action-packed and making plays and in tight and with my bow. And so I soaked it all in and just enjoyed the experience. I took my time, with pictures and butchering them. It was nice and cold, but the sun was out, and then just packed them out in the evening light, and just made the most of the experience. just absolutely awesome. It was so cool hunting those muleys during the rut, and then able to help my uncle. My uncle hasn't harvested a deer, and it's like been, I don't know, 5-6 years or something like that. I'm trying to remember. The last one he harvested was this big candlestick buck. And so he hasn't harvested a good buck for a while, and he passed on a lot of bucks. And then we finally found this really nice deep fork buck that had great fronts, great backs. And I told him, I said, man, that's a heck of a buck. We should make a play on that. So I got to make a play on that buck with him and my uncle Roger, and then my dad went with us. So it was us three, and hunting and able to make a play down just this snowstorm, and that buck was rutting does and able to get in, and he made a perfect shot on that buck and dropped that, and he was really appreciative, and just an awesome mule deer. And then I just got these networks of all these spots out there, and then cousin and my other uncle made it out there and able to go out and get my cousin a nice buck, and he shot his best buck. And so just an absolute epic trip. And part of the coolest thing is I grew up hunting with my dad and his two brothers and my cousin, and also my grandpa and some other family friends and that. But, I grew up hunting with these guys, and I was just a kid at the time, and my dad would just walk me so hard. We hunted Western Washington is where I grew up, and we would just beat brush day in, day out. We never road hunted. It was our MO, whether it was raining, which it's always raining in Western Washington. And you would put on your rain gear and you go out and beat brush. And so we hunted hard. And, as the years have gone on, my dad's moved out here to Montana with me, and we've been out here 20 years, and we've been hunting partners. My dad still goes really hard. He'll do anything with me. And he's kind of got away from a lot of the wilderness stuff, as I think it's just too much effort where he doesn't really enjoy himself anymore. But he keeps himself in good shape. Like I can push him to the end of earth, and he's always right behind me. He's just built for endurance. But, I've seen him kind of get older. That's how I know my dad now. And he's not that old. He's still young, and he goes hard, good shape. He's 56, but just his mindset has kind of changed. He's not as aggressive. A lot of times he'll let me go by myself. And also letting him harvest that buck. He's let me go on so many stalks and taught me to hunt as a kid, and to be able to pay him back for that with his biggest buck was just unbelievable. But anyways, where I'm going with this is like my dad, he's kind of got this mindset now, where he doesn't go as hard, and I'm this young kid that is just going everywhere. I'm going to multiple different states. I'm in grizzly country, lightning country, you name it. I am pushing my limits, and I'll do 20 miles a day, and I'll pack a buck out by myself, and I am just constantly pushing my limits. And I'm running marathons and ultra marathons to be in shape for hunting season, and I've just taken it to this next level, which I enjoy to the full. But I've always gone so hard. And then my dad's he's kind of takes a back seat, and he does a couple hunts with me, but it's just not that big a deal if he gets something or not. And he likes to harvest, and he likes to go hard, but it's just different. I've seen my dad, and so I kind of know him as kind of older and more mature. And then my uncles even more so. They're older than my dad, and they still go hard. They still love to hunt, but it isn't the same. Like I don't even know if my uncle from Washington likes to hunt with me anymore. I always say that as a joke, because I just push him so hard when he's had an elk tag over here. Like, you got to go hard and get into the backcountry. And I grind him into the mountains to, almost to the point of where he's not having fun, which is payback for him when I was a kid, taking me to all these spots and grinding me so hard in the rain and thick brush and stuff. But, so I joke that he doesn't like to hunt with me, but, I'm just absolutely kidding. But I kind of know now the three brothers are kind of getting older, and they're kind of, and they're still in good shape, and they can still go hard, but they're just a little bit more reserved, and you get on nasty roads and they get nervous, or nasty weather, and they play it more safe. And you get wiser as you get years underneath you as well. And I still go just as hard as when I was young, but I used to be like a little bit more reckless, I'd say. I just took more risks, and so I think it's just something you get with age. And I'm never going to stop going as hard as I can absolutely go, because it's my love. I love pushing my limits. I want to be in better shape. I'm 37 now. Like, I'm still just in the prime. I've learned all this knowledge about Western hunting, and I am going to work so hard to keep myself in shape where I can just keep finding my limits and pushing so hard, because it's what I love to do. But where I'm going with this is the three brothers have kind of got more reserved, but to get them in a wall tent and start hearing these stories about their youth, man, oh man, I wish I could record this or get them on a podcast, but it was just almost one of those moments in the wall tent, wood stove going, and you're sitting around and you're telling stories. And the three brothers telling stories, they used to go so hard. Oh my God. They used to, they were doing what I was doing. It was just in Washington, and there wasn't, they hunted out of state here and there, but it was pretty much going for in Washington for blacktails in the backcountry and elk. But they're the ones who taught me about backpack hunting, but knew absolutely nothing. There wasn't any information out. And so they're using old pack frames. They're not packing water. They're packing Cokes, and they're packing Twinkies and, whatever else they could fit in their packs, but huge packs that weighed way too much and packing in there. And they're leaving at 3 o'clock in the morning, day in, day out. And so to hear these stories in a wall tent, even before I was hunting with them, and how hard these three brothers went, and just some of the stuff they went through and challenges they faced, and that, there was a guy that died back where we used to hunt. His name was Oscar Buck, and he died back there. He froze to death, hypothermia, back where we used to hunt. But they used to grind so hard, and they didn't have the gear that we had. I mean, they had old Helly Hansen, like deadliest catch rain gear out there, and then flannels and wool pants, and which wool is good, don't get me wrong, but they didn't have the quality of gear. They didn't have the knowledge or backpacking knowledge. And then getting a deer out. They told me one story about my dad and my uncle when they were younger. And they'd always just, you hunt a lot of logged off country in Washington, and then we had these backpack spots that they started hunting where they could get further back in. But a lot of it was like all this logged off country where you just drag your deer down to the road, or even an elk, you get enough guys on it, drag it down, and then, load it up whole like that. Or they told me this one story. They started backpack hunting this spot and shot this deer way back in there in the spot that's 4 or 5 miles. And it's a grind to get in there. I mean, I remember it as a kid, and then I've been back and hiked in there since. And it is a frickin' grind to get in there, and they shot a buck way back in there. And they split that thing in half and drug it all the way out of there. 5 miles or some crazy thing like that. This half deer. Those guys were out of their minds. But they went so hard, and just hearing these stories about, their weeks of hunting and their adventures and different bucks they got into and different bulls they got into, and, the rodeos. They got horses at one point and worked horses in some of the rodeos. My dad had this horse named Mayday, and he should have known from the name. But I mean, there's more stories about this horse, hitting the vine maples on the pack and freaking itself out and just running down the trail and flipping itself over. And they got more rodeos and went so hard for these blacktails and these bulls. It was just really fun, and it was the first time I could really see it in this different light. Like I always knew they hunted hard, and then as they get older and more reserved, like they're kind of the older, more sensible guys, and I'm the crazy kid that goes everywhere. But when they were my age, believe me, they were going just as hard. They were these Western Washington, just tough as nail guys that the weather never stopped them, snow, rain, cold. And they didn't have the gear, they didn't have the knowledge, but oh my gosh, did they go hard. The effort put forth, leaving at 3:30 in the morning to go get into spots and coming way out in the dark and out there where, direction's a lot more confusing in Washington, where it's all timbered and old growth and ferns growing underneath, but they went so hard. And so I was able to kind of see it in this new light that I had never seen before, that, that's where I come from. That's my DNA right there. These three brothers going so hard. They instilled all this work ethic into me and all this hard hunting into me, that's part of my makeup that I didn't even realize. Like, I heard some old stories and it'd be cool, but I was finally able to like sit back in this wall tent and just go, wow, and just have this conversation with the three brothers that I got together. And the three of them haven't been together for 6-7 years. The last time my Uncle Drew and cousin Drew, they both drew deer tags and killed a nice buck. But my other uncle wasn't able to come. But just to sit in this wall tent and have a cold beverage with these guys, and to be able to sit there as their equal now, as a grown adult that pays bills and hunts hard and has their respect, and then to be able to sit in there and hear these old stories of back in the heyday of this Western Washington and this coastal rainforest, and just appreciate them for their effort and how hard they went, never missing a weekend, never missing a day. Any day they could take off and go hunt, they were doing it, and drive miles and spend all their money on gas just to be able to be in the woods and trying. And where hunting's a lot more difficult to find animals and find out, but they would just go so hard and never lose faith and always be looking for that next critter. And so that for me was one of the coolest parts of the trip, was being able to sit back and be able to appreciate these stories and appreciate like how hard my dad and his two brothers went for it in Washington. And just the stories of tents falling over, and I mean they just had so many great stories. God, it's something that I'll never forget, and I have to take to heart. And I need to sit down with a journal and just recall some of these stories that I can write down, or maybe sit down with my dad. I think I could get my dad on the podcast to try to tell some of these stories with me in Western Washington. So maybe that's what I'll try to do. Maybe that's my next step, and then I'd have a recording of my dad telling these stories. So I think I'll try to convince my dad and bring my recording equipment over and see if we can talk about some of the old heydays in Western Washington, and then some of the adventures me and Dad have had. I know when we first moved over here to Montana, we moved over here and so hungry to kill bulls and kill elk, and we're finally just in the heart of Montana being able to hunt. But it's still not a given, and it's not easy. It's tough. It's public land. It's general season, and also we don't have the knowledge. We're used to hunting Western Washington. We're not used to hunting Montana. We had to learn everything. But I remember I had killed a couple bulls just going so hard, and killed a couple bulls my first year out here. The first one I killed with my bow is such an epic experience. Came into these two bulls fighting, and I was just hunting after work. After work every night, I'd go hunt somewhere, and I'd walk down this skidder road and caught these bulls fighting, and able to sneak in and put a good arrow into this bull, and then kill him, and then come back and call my buddy Dan and get my buddy Dan up there, and he helped me track down this bull and help me pack him out at night. And I still got a couple photos of that I'll try to post up for you guys to see, my first bull elk. And then the next year came along, and I went in, hunted hard all bow season, didn't kill one, and then went rifle season for opener, and convinced this guy from work to go pack in with me, backpack in. And it's that same Washington mentality, knew nothing about backpacking, and so I had way too much weight. I mean, who knows, 70 pounds worth of gear. I mean, I had eggs in there, bacon. I had so much crap in that backpack, but I just knew there was bulls like way back in this drainage, and so I backpacked in there. And then my buddy I had convinced, it got cold that night, like well below zero, and I got a Walmart sleeping bag, and the pack in was brutal, through a foot of snow, and we got way back in there, saw like a couple cows right at dark, or maybe we were still hiking at the dark. I think we saw some elk in the morning, but it was before opener, slept in there, and it was well below zero, like 5 below, 10 below, something like that night. And I had this Walmart sleeping bag. Who knows what I had for a pad, or if I even had a pad, but I froze that night. I had to wake up at like 3 in the morning or so, and I was having these dreams about death. And not that I was on the edge of hypothermia, but my mind was dreaming up this stuff, and I woke up so cold. I had all my clothes on and in my sleeping bag, and I had to wake up and start a fire, and started a fire, and woke up at daybreak, woke Mike up, the guy I was hunting with, and we went up and hunted, and I saw some cows, didn't see any bulls or anything, and we got back, and Mike said, no, I'm done. Says, I just can't do this. I can't do this back, but this is too tough on me. And I'm all, man, seriously? Like, we're in here, we got all our stuff in here, like, let's just hunt. He's all, man, I'm about out of water. And I said, well, I'll go for water. It's way down in this draw. And So I left Mike there, and I went down to go get water, and got down in there, and there was a grizzly bear track in there, and there was blood in the track. I think somebody had shot it that morning, and it was going down to where I had to get water. I remember seeing those grizzly bear tracks in the snow, and this is like my second year in Montana. So I get down in there, fill up the water, and come back. And by the time I get back, Mike's got all his stuff packed up. Well, I should say most of his stuff packed up. He left some other stuff for me to pack out. I'm heavy enough as it is, but he just said he couldn't do it. And so he left me in there by myself, but there was just no way I was coming out of there. And then the next day, I spotted 2 bulls way off, about as far as you could go, with an hour and a half left of daylight. And I remember I ran pretty much the whole way, leaving my camp, leaving my vantage point, all my stuff, and crossed this drainage and got up there and caught that bull at last light, 200 yards, and dumped this really nice 6x7 and started rolling down the hill. And it was so steep, he was rolling down the hill, and I shot him directly above me, and he's just flying. All I can see is horns and hooves, and pretty soon I'm like, man, do I go left? Do I go right? As he's rolling right at me, and I go right. Well, I get out of the way as this thing like rolls down by me at 60 miles an hour and tangles up in this tree. But anyway, so I killed a bull, packed out my camp. But so I had killed a couple bulls, but Dad still hadn't killed a branch antler bull. And so I just started glassing a bunch, and I started believing in this glassing, and I spotted these bulls a long ways off, and it was so far in there. Like, we made it in there in a day, and we packed in to stay overnight. Yeah, that's right. We packed in to stay overnight, and so we dropped our stuff where we were going to camp, and then we made the climb after these elk I had seen, and we got way up in there, and I pushed my dad to his absolute limits. I mean, I don't know how many miles and how much elevation we did that day, but it's got to be 12, 15 miles just in there to where we shot the elk, plus we brought him out a little ways that night, and then, all at 2,500 vert, or probably getting in there and everything, probably more like 3,500 vert. And, I didn't train at that point, but I was young. I was, 22-year-old kid or something. So, for me, I was able to push, and Dad too, he was in good shape from hunting hard, but I pushed him to his limits, almost where it made him exhaustion sickness. And he was so dehydrated in there after he shot that bull, but we got him in there, and he shot his first, branch antler bull, in Montana. He'd killed some in Washington, but it was his biggest bull to date, and killed that. But, so, he was still willing to go hard and push to his limits, and we hunted really hard for the next 10 years hunting together, and killed some great bulls here and there, and bucks as well. But it's just always really fun hunting with my dad, and he's still young and still in really good shape, can still go really hard. But I'm just starting to appreciate all these times I can hunt with my dad and these stories I have, and just how hard he went when he was my age. Man, those guys were absolute animals. So, but that was probably, one of the coolest parts of the trip for me, was sitting inside that wall tent and doing that. So did get my uncle a deer, did get my cousin a deer, his best deer to date. Just, epic hunting at its finest. And, I am just so fortunate to be able to take the time I did this season, and then be able to have the hunting I did, and to see that type of mule deer hunting was just insane to me. So that's what I'm searching for, is the next epic close encounter with my bow. But man, that went quick. Guys, I'm already at an hour and 20 minutes on this deal. Just so fun, such great hunting. I'm going to try to close this thing out now, and I got another, get my run in, and then record another podcast tonight. So I'm going to get that done and just keep working hard to get you guys good info. Thanks so much for all the positive comments. I'm really seeing a lot of guys harvest nice animals, and send me message, and nothing means more to me than getting a message that you were successful and that you like the podcast. And so just the support has been absolutely overwhelming. Just want to continue to do right by you guys, and improve too, and improve at my interviewing skills, and improve at my conversation with good hunters, and getting the right information to you guys, improve at these solo ones, solo podcasts, and just take really good notes, and try to pay attention when I'm finding success, why I'm finding success, and try to keep getting you guys this next level tips and tactics to make you better in the field. So I sure appreciate all the support, you guys, with the podcast, reviews on iTunes, the social media, Instagram, Facebook. Thanks a million, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks to Eastmans for everything they do for the podcast, and just a great company to work for. Got some really good articles coming up. One I need to get done this weekend. That I need to write an article that I just pitched, and so I'll get that done. And then the filming, I just had that mule deer episode come out, High Country of Wyoming. I think that turned out really well. I'm really proud of the way it came out. Just had a great cameraman. The editor, Lindsay, put everything together for me. Just some awesome time lapses she worked in. So I'm really proud of the way it came out, and I just want to keep improving on the video end of things and telling that story. So pretty proud of that. Make sure to check that out. Eastman's Hunting TV Outdoor Channel. I'm sure it'll rerun if you just look for it. And it isn't out anywhere on the internet, but I really want to get some videos out to you guys out on the internet. I have an awesome caribou hunt that I did earlier this season that I have recorded that I want to get out, and maybe get some beyond the grid stuff out. I got another mule deer hunt that's sitting around. I got to find some time and sit down on my computer and edit these things out. But I'm going to get that to you guys on an internet platform so you guys can see it. And with that, better get to it, get my run in. You guys keep working hard. Keep collecting those trophies, sending me shots. So happy for you guys. It's just this cool family that we've built here at Eastmans Elevated. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it. So that's the end of the podcast. I'll check in with you guys next week.